I joined the army on the 17th of July 1977. I loved it. I had green blood. It was a brutal time. The army was very different. I really took to the army because I had nothing to go back to. I was fortunate enough to be one of the first paramedics on the streets of London, and I ended up working on the helicopter emergency medical service. Richard Branton took over the sponsorship, but I wrote to Richard, could I have a couple of free tickets to Johannesburg? Because he sponsored another helicopter in Joburg. To my surprise, he said, yeah, rock up, and if there's a spare seat, you're on. 50 people a day used to get shot or murdered. I concentrated on saving one life at a time. When I came back from Africa, I lectured for a year because I didn't have anything left. I found myself in a kind of dark place. No one's coming to save you. If you're coming through this, you're coming through this on your own. So make a plan, get to work, let's go. Quite enjoyed a little bit of bushcraft and survival. And I started to make the videos. I got picked up by National Geographic. You won't find greater preppers than the British Army. It's putting a little bit aside today because tomorrow might be a bit tougher. And that's all it is.
It's debrief time, and this week I've got a friend of our very own Fruitcake. He goes by the name of Roach, the armoured cockroach. How are you, buddy? You all right?
Yeah, all good, nothing bad.
Nothing bad, but that's good. That's a good start.
Lovely to meet you, Phil.
Good, good to have you on. Listen, I'm going to do the same with you as I do with all my guests. I'm going to take you on an adventure, and I'm going to debrief your life for you. Is that all right? Nice one. So listen, let's talk about the small Roach. Where are you from, and what were you like as a kid?
I was born in South London.
Okay.
My family were greengrocers.
Whereabouts in South London?
Clapham. I was born
Clapham. Lovely place. Yeah, nice.
My dad was a stallholder, so
Okay.
he had a fruit and veg stall in the high street. We had a little shop. Everybody, in the late 70s, come to us for the fruit and veg. The Saturday afternoon,
The old man had all the patter then, didn't he? All the sort of
queue would go down the high street.
line up the ladies, like, getting their shoppers in.
It's really funny because I do remember, so I used to have to work on a stall.
Yeah.
And some sort of costers were very vocal, funny.
Yeah.
But that wasn't my old dad.
No,
not at all. He was very quiet. He was kind of a short, barrel-chested guy, but he had like hands like shovels.
Yeah.
I mean, he did manual work all his life. Started off on a coal round.
Yeah.
That was his first job, and always kind of lived outdoors. Funny thing about my old man is he had 12 brothers and 4 sisters.
Wow, that's a big old family, isn't it? Wow.
But I always wonder what it would be like to be going out with one of the girls,
Yeah.
and have all the boys come after you. Sort of.
Yeah. So was it a happy childhood for you? Did parents stay together, all that sort of caper?
Yeah. Do you know? So my mum had 3 children from her first marriage. She took up with my dad. By all accounts, he was a bad lot. And they had 3 kids of their own. My dad brought us all up.
Okay.
We all grew up in my grandma's house. When she passed, my dad worked with her. So
Okay.
all the boys went here, there and everywhere. And we moved into grandma's house. And I was in my probably early teens before I even realised that my sisters weren't my
Well, half sisters. Yeah.
half
Got you.
sisters.
Yeah,
I mean, the old man brought us all up. We were greengrocers, so we had plenty of food in the house. But and I always had a bit of change in my pocket, But we weren't wealthy by any stretch of the imagination.
No, but you've done all right. You were doing all right.
Oh yeah. My dad didn't own a car,
They didn't need to. You don't need to in London now, do you? Do you know what I mean? You don't need one in London.
We kind of gone full circle.
And if it's not electric, you're going to pay for the nose anyway, aren't you?
Yeah, for sure. But grew up in South London.
What was it like at school then? How was your school days?
So I went to Henry Thornton School, and the school was sort of 60% Afro-Caribbean, and I was probably one of the. I was the only white kid in a black gang. And
that sort of thing. I mean, to be honest, right, that sort of thing. And I speak to a lot of people from sort of like the Clapham area too. That's where my brothers were brought up. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And I know East London quite well.
Yeah.
People just look at you as an individual. Colour doesn't ever come into it, does it? Do you know what I mean?
No.
No one cares, do they? Do you know what I mean?
I mean, at that time, Like I say, we were far from wealthy, but I kind of took my white privilege and went and lived with all the poor black people. Because if you were poor, you all lived in the same place.
Yeah.
And so most of my friends, were of colour. Mate, I remember going to a kind of Baptist church on a Sunday with my mate Julian Phipps, and we had a crazy old time,
Good old sing-song, I'd imagine, as well, wasn't it?
Yeah. My mum always enjoyed the community of the church, though she wasn't particularly religious. So she was brown owl or guide captain, that sort of thing. And Dad was a greengrocer, but the family knew everybody.
Right, okay.
Everybody came to us, and if kind of Roach got up to no good, someone would go up the store and tell my old man. When I come back,
that don't give you no wiggle room, does it?
No. I mean, if I bunked off school, or someone saw me smoking as a teenager,
Yeah, they knew straight away.
Got straight back to him. I've just seen your Michael in the chippy, smoking as players number 6 or whatever it was. And I'd be in for an ID when I got home.
Yeah.
But,
did you do any good at school? Did you get any qualifications?
No. I was kind of disruptive. I found school difficult.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was kind of systematically bullied. In that school, there were white gangs, there were black gangs, and if you weren't in a gang, then you were prey.
Okay. And you didn't sort of like conform with none of that,
No.
and so you became prey, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I had a little kind of clique of 2 or 3 really close friends, and we were big. For our age, we were pretty big. So we started to, the old buzzer would go at the change of lessons, and we'd all get together.
Yeah.
We'd go from lesson to lesson, together. But the greatest day of my kind of school life was I really liked my martial arts, and there was a judo club at school. And I just took to it.
Judo's a great sport. I did judo as a kid, and it's a great sport for your foot positioning, your balance, your grip.
And your self-confidence and your physical strength,
Yeah.
And as a kind of young kid, you got all this energy. I was always big, but I had, like a lot of youngsters, I had no idea how to control it.
Yeah.
So I was on the edge of getting lost, so going into petty crime, I was a flash kid. And I needed sort of someone to bring me down a couple of pegs,
Yeah.
And I got into judo and loved it, mate. I mean, I would be at school during the day. I'd finish school, go and help the old man pack the store up, pack the van for the next day. I'd be back up to the school, to the judo club. I ended up as a junior judo international.
Wow.
Fought at the Budokai with our sort of silver and bronze medalists were sort of Dave Starbrook was one of the kind of chief.
Brian Jacks are here, wasn't it? It's Brian Jacks. He came to our club once. He came to our club. I didn't do it for very long, but I remember, Ponce and Nagi and Tominagi and all those different throws. Like, do you know what I mean? I remember all that sort of stuff, and it was a really cool thing to do. And Brian Jacks was like an idol, wasn't he? Because he'd been on TV and
he was the Olympic.
I remember him coming, just stared at him for about 20 minutes. I know, it was Brian Jacks.
The greatest day of my secondary school life was when the school bully, or one of the guys that used to bully me, ended up being put in the judo class because like ice skating or something else had been cancelled.
Yeah.
And I was terrified of this kid because he had a brother and a little clique, and they used to, like I say, they used to prey on people. And this guy's like throwing me all over the place. My judo instructor come up to me and he said, like, Roach, what are you doing? He said, go out there and batter that kid. And if you don't, I'm going to batter you.
Yeah.
I feared my judo instructor more than I feared the school bully. So I did as I was told. I went out there.
Did you go and slam him about?
Yeah, I did. I went out there and and I kind of dropped this kid all over the place. And I was kind of brutal, So instead of sort of throwing this guy and letting him go just before we hit the mat, I'd come down with my body weight, really sort of, just sort of crush him on the mat. And after the judo class, there were loads of threats. It was, I'm going to get you, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And after that day, my life changed. No one came after
None of those threats materialised, do they? Do you know? Yeah, yeah. It's funny, isn't it? That. Yeah.
None of those kids came after me, and suddenly it was the greatest day of my school life.
Brilliant.
You know, because mate, I just walked in school. I didn't get robbed anymore. You know, I mean,
Yeah, that's it. You're free to roam.
Yeah.
So you got through school.
Yep.
Where did you go then? What happened? What did you get up to then?
It's really funny. It's really funny. My dad was a deserter during the kind of Suez. There was national service.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well, he went to sign up for his national service, and when he got home, his brothers and his mum just tore him a new one. You know, what on earth you think you're doing, and you know, blah blah blah, and you're not going. And so the old man deserted,
sacked it off, just went, not for me.
He was on a run for like ages, you know, and and I don't know what it was, but I kind of went through the Scouts, you know, and I went through the Cubs and the Scouts because my mum liked the church, you know.
Yeah.
So and it was church parades at the weekends, and
bit of remembrance in there with the Scouts and that. They do all that sort of stuff, don't they?
Yeah. You know, and I really took to all that, all the camping and the kind of adventure training that they do, and I absolutely loved it. Anyway, age 17 and a half, Roach tabs down the recruiting office at Waterloo and joins the army.
So who did you join?
I went into the Queen's Regiment. So
okay, all right.
I was infantry. So
what year was that?
I joined the army on the 17th of July, 1977.
Oh wow! Wow, that's a bit before. And you did about 12 years, didn't you?
Yeah. So I did. It's really funny. I did 10 years, 168 days.
So you would have got out while it was still the Queen's Regiment as well, wouldn't you? Because I was a Royal Hampshire, we amalgamated eventually, didn't we? So
my military service, mate, I loved it. I had green blood.
Where did you train? Did
Basingball.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So my training team. So I'll tell you a story. So later on, I was an instructor at the depot.
Yeah.
You know, but there was a guy called Chuck Cullinane who was one of my training corporals, and he was a big old lump, you know, bigger than me, you know, and I was standing in the corridor, and Chuck's walking down the line. There's about 100 recruits in my platoon, because with the wastage, they want a decent passing out parade, you know. So there were a lot of guys. And Chuck's walking down the line, taking names, and he walks up to me, and he didn't say anything to me at all, and he hit me as hard as I've ever been hit. And he just, without a word said, he just knocked me to the ground, right? Wow. And he stood there, and he just laughed at me, and then moved on to the next man, right? so
that's pretty random, isn't it?
Mate, some years later, right, when I'm a patrol commander in the COP in Londonderry, Chuck is our colour sergeant, and
controllers, they used to call them in COP, didn't they? As a colour sergeant, they used to call them controllers, didn't they?
I asked him. I said, like, Chuck, what was that day all about? And he said, oh mate, he said, I dropped you because you were the biggest. And he said, if you day one, he said, if you drop the biggest geezer, you don't get any grief from anyone else for the next 27 weeks, you know. And he said it was as simple as that.
Really?
But it was a brutal time. The army was very different, you know.
I think it was different. I think there was a lot more of that sort of stuff. You know, proper physical punishment was dished out in those days, wasn't it? Without a doubt. Do you know what I mean?
Call it corporal punishment for nothing, did they?
Yeah. And it did sort of, like, for me, I agreed with some of it, but it could borderline this grey area, which then turned into bullying very quickly and was well out of order. Do you know what I mean? If you're an idiot, a backhander sorts it out sometimes, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean? I think, but
if you've got 120 men, you know, so young men from all over the country, you haven't got a lot of time to reason with people.
No,
you know, and I would. So later in my military career, I learnt something that I think people like you and me in later life, blatantly obvious, and that thing is that I really took to the army, and I kind of committed myself to it, and I was a good recruit, and I was a good soldier. But the reason I was a good recruit was because I had nothing to go back to.
Yeah, no, I
You
get
know,
that as well. I get that. It's do
you
or
know,
die, innit?
yeah, whereas some of the guys, some of the guys had options, they
Yeah,
had girlfriends at home, the old man could put you to work. I mean, if I was going to go home, I was going to end up sort of running my man's fruit and veg stall,
yeah,
and that would have been me. And so yeah, I committed to it because I didn't have anything to go back to.
yeah.
And when I was training recruits, I could see that in some of the men that I was training.
Yeah, I'm sure you can. Yeah,
You know,
yeah. So you did about 12 years, didn't you?
yep,
You did 12. So
yeah.
where did you go? Did you do any operational
Oh
tours?
yeah. So as soon as I finished basic training, I joined the battalion in Gibraltar,
Okay.
and mate, that's the first time a kid from South London's been out of the country.
And there you are on the on the back end of Spanish
Mate,
in the British. Like, wow, what's this?
It was, it was amazing.
Yeah.
So that was my first posting, and loads of adventure training in Gibraltar. That was kind of all new. Canoeing, water skiing, scuba diving, rock climbing, whatever you wanted.
Yeah.
All of that. There were ceremonial duties at the frontier because that was shut. So we were down there, polishing brass cannons that are still there today.
Yeah.
And exercises,
Yeah.
So we came back to the UK for Crusader, which was a big NATO exercise, and yeah, it was really funny. They brought a battalion back from Gibraltar to Salisbury Plain, and within 24 hours, we had 120 men in the field hospital with hypothermia. Because we left Gibraltar on the Monday, and it was like
no acclimatisation. There you
98
go.
in the
Right.
shade.
Yeah.
And we got on Salisbury Plain, and it's like 6 below. And a lot of the guys are like falling like flies.
Yeah. I can imagine.
But I'll tell you something really interesting about Gib and that time.
Yeah.
Was in the late 70s. You might be able to remember, but hijackings were rife. Aeroplanes were getting hijacked.
That's right. Yeah. All the sort of like it was all Arab stuff, wasn't it? It was all
Well, this kind of leads me to your little life. But 2 guys came out from 22 SAS at Hereford, and they ran a carder in the battalion for a sort of pagoda team, for an anti-terrorist team.
Yeah.
They took 2 snipers from each of the rifle companies, and they were a sort of perimeter cordon. The regular troops were the cordon facing out. The snipers were the cordon facing in. One of these guys trained the sniper cordon, and the other guy came up, ran a carder, and they trained 3 assault teams. And they took it really seriously, And the idea wasn't that we were the SAS. The idea was that the frontier with Spain was shut. It was if British interest, if British aircraft didn't land in Spain, Portugal, they were landing in Morocco, they were landing in Algeria, they were, so that they wanted someone in that region. And the idea was that this unit, its sole purpose was if a plane got hijacked and they started killing passengers straight away, they had somebody there to do something.
This unit could rock up and at least knew what a plane door looked like.
Mate, the course was brilliant, But it was my first kind of little dalliance with the Special SOs.
Yeah.
But they were sort of, they just got all the kit they wanted. So there were chainsaws and crowbars and ladders and it was just, they put all this stuff on the ground and they said, okay, divide yourself up into teams, work out how you're going to get on this plane. And there were one of the guys put a ladder up the side of the plane, and he walked up the ladder and he just opened the door, and the door popped out, like slid down the fuselage and knocked him off the ladder. With stuff like that. And then they showed you what they wanted. But I think the plan was that if an aircraft landed and they started killing people straight away, then there was someone there. There was an interaction. But really, it just gave the Special Air Service, people like yourself, time to mobilise and get there. So that was quite interesting. But that sowed the seed for me from that time on.
Yeah.
I quite fancied being in the SAS. I quite fancied having a go at that, And and later on in my career, it's really funny. You'll meet a lot of people that will I meet people that tell me I was in the SAS.
Right, yeah.
but I'm probably the only guy you'll ever meet that almost passed on good attendance, because I did it 3 times.
Right, okay.
Only in later life
Yeah.
could I turn around and say brutally honestly to myself that I was fit as a butcher's dog. I mean, I was almost a professional athlete, but I know I never had that. I never had that faith in my own ability, that 100% confidence in yourself.
Yeah.
And it's like when I got on the hills and all the rest of it, it got to a stage where I wasn't making the time because I doubted my map reading. I'm thinking, am I going the right way? I don't want to get lost.
Overthinking it.
Yeah, and and that's a recent analysis for me, to turn around and say, well, why didn't that happen for me? And the truth of it was that mentally I wasn't tough enough, but yeah, but I
So you did give it a go.
yeah.
I think the key thing there is that at least you gave it a go. I get a lot of people coming to me going, I wish I'd done that. Well, it's too late now, son.
Well,
You're 60 years old, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You ain't going to do it now, are you?
I mean, the first time I did selection, I'm not kidding you, I must have been 19.
Yeah.
And I'd been in the army 18 months. I went down to Hereford and it was mizzen huts at the time, And I remember the training wing had a sign over the door and it said, many will try, but only the few will succeed.
Yeah.
And I'm one of the many, and that was kind of how it panned out, But come back from Gibraltar. First tour was Armagh City.
Okay.
So it was kind of Bobby Sands and all that was going on.
And a hunger strike,
Yeah,
and
and
all
a
that
hunger
sort of stuff.
strike,
And the blanket protests and all the rest of the stuff that was going on at the time.
It was a difficult time, I mean, I really enjoyed all those lovely country walks that we went on, in South Armagh and places like that,
Yeah.
And cutting your way through the thickest bit of like thorny hedge that you could find because there absolutely wouldn't be an IED there,
Yeah.
There were kind of the anniversary riots and the marches and all of that. You could walk around the loyalist areas, and they had red, white, and blue curbstones and lampposts. And then
some areas still have that now. It's still prevalent there.
You go to sort of staunch Republican areas, and they've got the Irish flag flying, and all of the paintings and all the rest of it.
All the murals and stuff, It's still massive over there. I've been over there twice this year. I've been over,
right?
In fact, and it's still massively prevalent in places.
I went last time I went back to the province, and I met up with Fruitcake, but I was there with Nigel Farage.
Okay.
I mean, I remember a guy coming up to me once, and he said, you know the trouble with you soldiers, and I sort of said no, and he goes, and he was deadly serious. He looked me in the eye and he said, "You've forgotten how to be British." Because they couldn't understand why people on the mainland don't have a Union flag flying outside their house.
Yeah,
they couldn't understand it.
Yeah.
And do you know what I felt? There was something in that. There was something in that kind of obviously stayed with me to this day. I was a Catholic as well. So I had that little sort of twang in the back of my mind going on. People don't really understand what the provisional IRA was about.
No, I don't think they do. And I think certainly nowadays when you get this, you get some of these little hooligans at Celtic going on banging on about the Troubles. Well, you know about the Troubles, you don't see trouble in your life.
Yeah.
I mean,
Mate,
shut up.
It wasn't until I did 2 years in the COP in Londonderry. Well, we worked for Brigade Intelligence, a special branch. We didn't work for the battalion.
Yeah.
And we worked province-wide because we were the resident battalion. And we had this brilliant Royal Marine Commando captain who was kind of platoon commander. People really took us seriously, and we got some kind of really peachy jobs. But the provisional IRA were so a fledgling political party has to be funded. Yeah, and at that time, provisional IRA were funded by organised crime. So the sort of thing that happened was, you'd be working on a building site, and Thursday was payday. The pyroman would be sitting at the end of the table with a bucket. Everyone would get paid. And you put 20 quid in the bucket for the pyro. And if you didn't, they'd say to the foreman, like, Billy didn't put any money in. If he's here on Monday, we're going to shoot you. Right? So the foreman would go, oh, Billy, look, I've got enough brickies next week. I don't need you anymore. Right? So that's how it affected.
You basically, yeah.
That's how it affected regular people.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of the kind of things like, you know, I'm going to put a fruit machine in your pub, and I'm going to have £500 a week out of that fruit machine. If anyone touches my fruit machine, I'm going to blow your pub up. Right? So that was the sort of thing that was going on. You know, lots of kind of regular people.
Well, that's what these terrorist organisations do. They prop themselves up and hide behind normal people, don't they?
Yeah.
You know, you see it. Dare I say, you see it in Gaza now.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Hamas build their stuff under hospitals. Hamas hide behind the populace. And those populace, you've got to feel sorry for them, because you're like, hang on a minute, do you know what I mean? You don't want to be involved, but you can't be seen not to be involved.
My 2 pence on the people that live in the province was 4% of them were actively involved in organised crime and all the rest of it. That just meant that 96% of people wanted to just
get on with their lives.
Yeah. They wanted what everybody
of course
wants.
they do.
You know, they wanted,
why would you want that grief?
They wanted decent housing, education for their kids, healthcare when they needed it. You know, we had more in common than we did that divided us.
Yeah, of course.
You know? And so my kind of time in the army, my time in the province, you know, wasn't about you know, hunting down the IRA and massive gunfights and all that sort of thing. You know, I kind of looked upon what I achieved there as you know, we're patrolling 24 hours a day, and what we're saying is no one's going to hurt you tonight. You know, you're going to be all right.
Yeah.
The sort of thing that happened, if there was a big political rally, pyroman would knock on your door and say, oh, you know, there's a rally, a march, you know, we'd love you to be involved. And if the old man said, you know what, I really appreciate it, but it's not for me, the pyroman would go, oh, that's all right, no problems, you know, don't worry about it. And they go, oh, thank you very much. But like 3 months later, you know, 2 o'clock in the morning, there'd be half a dozen blokes drag the old man out in the street and beat him almost to death. And the next time the pyroman knocked on that door, you and your little family were right up the front.
Yeah.
That was the sort of thing that we were battling. You know, we weren't out there shooting terrorists or anything like that.
No, you were out there as a sort of like, I don't know, almost,
you know, and
almost a security blanket for people.
That really changed people's lives.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, I mean, when I was in the COP later in my kind of career, we had the Supergrass trials. We lifted 22 of the biggest players in Londonderry. They all stayed on remand for the best part of 14 months. It was like the quietest year they'd ever been. They'd ever been in Londonderry, you know. Yeah. So yeah, that was what I achieved, I think, in my.
So did you go anywhere else in the military? Did you do any operations outside of Northern Ireland?
No. I mean, that was it for me. The Falklands came along, but we were, and I was desperate to go. I had a mate I met at Warminster when I did my skillet arms instructors course, called Judd Dowdall, and he was from the Dukes. And me and Judd almost went absent and like went down to Portsmouth to see if we could get on a boat. We really felt kind of passed over, and you know, that was I mean, a lot of professional soldiers, they want to get involved in it.
I know the feeling. Gulf War One came along. I was actually sat in Londonderry when Gulf War One came along, and you desperately wanted any way you could to get out there, but there wasn't the plane, there wasn't the seats for you. Do you know what I mean? So that's the way it panned out.
I was working. So we were in Cyprus working for the UN with that tasking. So the Falklands came and went. You know, we weren't involved in it.
No, that's it. Gone.
You know, but yeah, I would have loved. You know, really loved to have been involved in it.
So you made the leap out of the military. What did you start getting into then? Yeah,
so when I kind of left the army, so I was an instructor at the recruit depot. It's a very physical place. I wanted to go back and do selection again. I'd been invited to return.
Yeah.
My colonel at the depot said I couldn't go. I need a replacement from your unit. They won't send one. You can't go. And I basically sort of said, poke it. And I put my notice in to leave the army because my idea was to go to 21 and see if I could get in the back door sort of thing, and suddenly I'm a civvy with a wife and 2 kids with no food in the house and no job.
Yeah. I've been there and all.
Yeah. I mean, I listened to your story
Yeah.
and I remember going down to sign on, and I was on my month's leave before, so I went down there and they said, have you got any money coming in? And I said, yeah, I'm on salary till the end of the month. And they said, oh, well, come back then. I said, well, can you give me the forms so I can bring them back all filled in? And they go, no. Right. So I went down there. I went back. So, I've got a young family. We've rented this flat, got no food in the house. And what they did for me was nothing. You don't qualify for anything.
Mm.
And I never went back, and so that was the first sort of taste of that. And that meant that I kind of fell back on what I knew. And what I knew was being self-reliant.
Yeah.
No one's coming. No one's coming to save you, So if you're coming through this, you're coming through this on your own. So make a plan, get to work, let's go. And I got a job at the Ford Motor Company on their kind of security department, which was Dagenham was, be like 25,000 people worth.
Big old place, wasn't it? Dagenham, yeah, huge, wasn't it?
It was a small town in itself, Worked there for 18 months, and it was a funny old day. So very simply, my foreman was driving off of the estate, and my relief was in. And I drove off the estate right behind him. And the next morning he pulled me to one side and he said, don't ever do that again. He said, don't ever follow me off the estate, And I thought to myself, you know what, Mick, this is such an easy job. And here I am cutting corners and sloping off early. And I went in the very next day. I thought, well, it's in to the left. But I did my resettlement as an approved driving instructor. Yeah. I had one exam left to take. And people said to me, oh, yeah, what are you going to do if you fail that exam? And I said, well, I won't, And I hired a little car. I drove around talking to myself for a week as if I had a pupil in there. And I took my last exam and I passed it. And, I was a driving instructor. Yeah. But I chose that because I was a weapons instructor. I went to Junior Brecon.
Well, you know how to instruct, don't you? You've got instructor qualifications. It doesn't matter if you're teaching someone to drink a cup of tea or
explain, demonstrate, practice.
Absolutely, spot on.
Confirm learning by good question and answer technique.
Yeah, all the good stuff.
Yeah, so I quite enjoyed that for a while, but it got a bit monotonous. And my marriage failed. I sort of came out of the army to save my marriage, and promptly got divorced. I got married at 18, but discovered women when I was 30. Which didn't go well, But yeah, I thought, you know what, I'll be a copper, So I applied to various police forces. But my dad had a couple of brothers, a couple of my uncles were villains. My dad pulled me to one side and said, look, if you want to be a copper, good luck to you, but expect the family to take a step back, and I thought, all right, I joined the fire service. But at that time, you couldn't join the fire service if you had if you wore glasses.
Okay.
So I took a job in the ambulance service doing non-emergency patient transport, which is everybody started there in the late 80s. And did that for 18 months. Then the national ambulance dispute came along, After that, I sort of went back and requalified as a qualified ambulance person, which would be emergency medical technician now.
Yeah.
Later, I qualified as a paramedic. I was involved in so after the national ambulance dispute, London Ambulance, which is the biggest ambulance service in the country, had 12 paramedics, right? And none of them were operational. They were all in senior management or training.
Wow.
And one of the things that the ambulance dispute achieved was the government bought the people of London a new ambulance service. They spent 15 million on it. So we got, we had a fleet of trucks that had 200,000 miles on them and were breaking down every day. We didn't have any paramedics, so it was a very basic life support system that we had then. I was fortunate enough to be one of the first paramedics on the streets of London, and I ended up working on the helicopter emergency medical service at the Royal London Hospital. The course was tough. Luckily for me, it was modular, so I'm not an academic, but in those days it was chopped up into intubation and infusion. Then you go and do a defibrillator course. Then you go and do your drugs, blah, 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 blah. And slowly but surely you ended up with all of these modules, and boom, there you go. You're a frontline paramedic. And I loved it. One of the greatest days of my life. I remember I had a beautiful GSXR 1100, and I've got me a green paramedic jumpsuit on, and I used to live in Forest Gate, and I've gone screaming down a Mile End Road, feeling like Tom Cruise, pulled up at the Royal London Hospital on my big motorbike, and all the nurses are looking at me, and then I get in the lift and go work on a helicopter. It was like, I just felt like king of the world.
I bet, yeah.
But when I worked on the heli, it was sponsored by Express Group newspapers. Greatest thing about HEMS is they can get anywhere within the M25 in 12 minutes. London is one of the safest places in the world to live. We get about 12 trauma calls a day across Greater London. Most of those are they were serious road traffic accidents, falls from height, that sort of thing. Shootings and stabbings and stuff were pretty rare, although they did happen. Well, it was sponsored by Express Group newspapers. Richard Branton took over the sponsorship. I came off of the heli, and quite cheekily, maybe I took a leaf out of your book, but I wrote to Richard and I said, could I have a couple of free tickets to Johannesburg? Because he sponsored another helicopter in Joburg. And to my surprise, he said, yeah, rock up, and if there's a spare seat, you're on. Right? I contacted...
Nothing ventured, nothing gained, didn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I contacted Santon Fire Department, and they would be like the best fire department in Greater Johannesburg. And their headquarters would have been the equivalent to our Canary Wharf. Their financial centre was Santon. A very wealthy place, And I spoke to the fire chief and I said, hello, if I come out, can you put me up at the fire station? And he said, what do you want to come out here for? And I said, well, I said, I want to get better at what I do. I want to understand, be better at trauma management. And he said, mate, if you want to be better at trauma, this is the place for you. So this was the late 90s, 97. And my first trip to Joburg, I worked in Soweto and Alexander Township. So Alexander Township is 5 square kilometres, but 500,000 people live there. You got the tribal wars between Nkata, Zulus and ANC. Lots of organised crime.
Did you try and get your head around all that, or did you just go up for it? No. Forget about that.
Yeah,
just every time there's someone in front of me bleeding, I'll deal with that.
That's it. Yeah. I was there purely to deal with the person in front of me.
Yeah,
I was never going to change. It was the end of apartheid. There was a lot going on. I was never going to change that. So I concentrated on saving one life at a time. But when I worked in Soweto and Alex, 50 people a day used to get shot or murdered. So down there they used to fight with things called pangas, which are machetes, but they're made of iron.
Yeah.
And so they have if the wounds are, you get full thickness wounds. Sometimes traumatic amputations where it goes straight through the bone. Other times it will go down to the bone. So you get sort of catastrophic bleeding and all the rest of it, and lots of shootings.
Yeah.
And just kind of stepped up. I remember I had to go to their paramedic training for a couple of weeks, and I come out of paramedic training first day, and I'm running a response unit with a South African paramedic, guy called James Tully, and we get a call to a bank robbery in a place called Randburg, right? And these two guys have gone in a bank, they shot everybody, and there's no one to get them the money. Well,
oh, genius.
everybody in SA, so you, me, your old lady, your wife would have a 9mm Luger short tucked somewhere. So everyone sees the bank getting shot up. Everyone takes cover.
And then brasses
we wait. Yeah, we wait for the bad guys to come out of the bank.
Yeah.
And so that was the scene, So I turn up and I'm the first paramedic on scene. But in my head, I'm still in London.
Yeah.
I get on the radio and to the crisis control centre, and I say, "Make ambulances 10, every available paramedic response unit, task the helicopter." And a guy on the other end of the RT, he goes, Mikey, calm down, man, calm down. He says, "I've got to one ambulance, and I'm sending it." He said, "There's one response unit, but it's on the other side of the city. It's got to be half an hour." Right? He said, "The helicopter is on its way." And he goes, "Welcome to South Africa." He goes, "Make a plan." And he put it down.
Hung up.
And that was the day that I learned about triage.
Yeah, I mean, that's proper triage, isn't it?
Yeah,
and it's like, you see the guys and girls on the MERT teams now, they understand it.
Yeah.
And they understand exactly what they're doing and who to leave and who to pick and who to treat and who not to treat. And
so the way we kind of did that one was we said, everybody that could walk, everyone that wants to go to hospital, that the ambulance is just around the corner from the bank. Anybody that wants to go to hospital, move over to the side of the bank where the ambulance is. And 9 people got up and moved.
Yeah.
Right. So we had 9 people left. 2 of those were quiet. And the other 7 were screaming their heads off. The other 7 had patent airways. We checked the 2 quiet people first. One of those was dead. So that was my P1 patient, the quiet guy. And it went on like that, So there was a guy who had a severed brachial artery.
Yeah.
And put a big ambulance dressing on it, bled through, big ambulance dressing on it, bled through, put a BP cuff on, inflated the BP cuff until the distal pulse disappeared. So now I've got a tourniquet. Let the cuff down till the pulse just came back, elevate the wound, get a bystander, hold his arm up in the air. If he goes quiet, come and get me, move on. Next patient.
Yeah.
Bum, 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 bum. There's a guy who got shot through the hand. Another guy got shot in the nape of the neck. So that bum, 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 bum. That was Africa. When I came back, man.
Your medical skills, though, must have gone from sort of like there to whoop.
Yeah,
absolutely taking off.
I worked in a place called Baragwana, which is a receiving hospital, and it's a kind of teaching training hospital. But they have operating theatres, they call them the pits, because they have seats like a theatre, like medicine here was in the 1800s, and students and people watch. But there, people say to me, "Oh, well, so they do a thing called pericardial centesis. They do needle chest decompressions. They do cricothyroidotomies, where you put a tube into the throat. They do chest strains. Paramedics do all of that.
Yeah.
And people say, "Well, why do paramedics do that? Why don't doctors do that like they do here?" Because in Africa at that time, if the paramedics turn up and they do it, you live.
Yeah.
And if you have to wait to get to hospital to have those medical interventions, you die.
Right. Okay. So yeah.
So
totally different deal.
Yeah, paramedics out there were really, really good. The other thing was that you were practicing that level every day. Bum 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 bum. So yeah. I learned how to do a thing called blind intubation. So you pass a tube down into the lungs.
Yeah.
And the tube has to go through the vocal cords. There's a high risk chance of the tube going down into the esophagus and into the stomach.
Yeah.
And so you're not getting any air into the lungs and the patient dies. So to do it blind is a big risk, But I remember crawling into a car wreck. This car had gone under the trailer of an articulated lorry, and I kind of crawled into the wreck with my head torch, and I got two tubes with me. I got a size 7, which is a little bit small, and I got size 8, which again is one size too small for someone like us. And what I do, a little bit of KY jelly, I put a tube in the mouth, I just roll it in my fingers, and it went in. And 95% of the time, that tube will go into the esophagus and into your stomach. Right? You leave, because that's the biggest tube.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you leave that tube in place, you get the other one, and you put it in, and you just twizzle it and advance the tube, and the only place left it can go.
It totally advance it in there as itself. Yeah, got you. Yeah.
And so you haven't used the laryngoscope, you haven't used a medical piece of kit. And now what you do is get your stethoscope out, you check the apexes and the bases of the lungs to see if you can hear airflow.
Yeah.
And if you can, I'd clip them on a ventilator, crawl out the wreck, and they'd start cutting the people out. And people say to me, well, yeah, but why did you do that? And I sort of said, can you hold your breath all the way from here to the hospital? They said, no. I said, we're knocking the patient. If we don't have an intervention on scene, all we do is we present a dead patient.
Yeah. I mean, that is the bottom line, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. You're right. If you can't do anything there and then, and it's going to impact your well-being, then
that's the outcome.
It's do or die, isn't it? Yeah.
But I worked at the medical centre in Soweto, and so no one walks around the townships looking for casualties. Right? So you work at the medical centre, it's got a big fence around it, and if you get injured, your friends and relatives take you to the medical centre.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm in the medical centre, guy gets brought in, gunshot wounds, multiple gunshot wounds to the chest. We work on him, he's intubated, infused, full drugs. He's had 12 shocks, he's being paced, so he's kind of artificially alive. And the ambulance comes to the medical centre, and we wheel him out of the medical centre to load him onto the ambulance. Right? And this guy steps out of the crowd and shoots him twice in the head on the trolley. And he said, this man is a very bad man and doesn't deserve to live. He went, boom, boom. Right. The guy that I was working with is a guy called Mark Young, and he's not a paramedic, he's a clinician. He worked in operating theatres, kind of prepared stuff for anaesthetists, used to a controlled environment, but a brilliant trainer and a really good friend, one of the best clinicians I've ever known. And Mark's going mad at this bloke.
Well, he's pretty random, I'm going to tell you. That's pretty random, isn't it?
He's going, oh, and he's continued to work on this guy, And I meant to put my hand in the back of Mark's jacket and throw him on the back of the ambulance. I put a body bag down by the side of the trolley. I rolled the body into it, zipped it up, put all the kit on the trolley bed on the ambulance, shut the doors to the ambulance, and we're gone. And later I sort of said to Marky, this is where being a soldier came in. I said to Marky, okay, Marky, you just saw that guy step out of the crowd and murder someone. What makes you think he would care about killing you?
Yeah.
Just like that, so that's what I kind of taught Marky. I taught Marky what being on the road is about, it not in a controlled environment.
It's not the time to be sending, you need to be receiving, don't you? Know what I mean? Unless you can do something about it. I mean, unless you can... You can't do anything, can you?
So that was Africa. I came back from Africa changed. I lectured.
Did you get any jobs that stuck out in your mind as this is absolutely ridiculous?
Oh, mate. So there was a so there are wicked and evil people in this world.
Yeah.
That the only thing you can do with them, if they were dispatched tomorrow, you could feel no loss.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember it's a lovely house, and this young couple just had a baby. The baby was 3 months old. It was their first night out since they've had the baby, and the grandparents are babysitting, right? And mum and dad are out. Grandparents are looking after baby. These 3 guys break into the house and start to torture the grandparents because they want to open the gun safe. But it's not their safe. They don't know the combination. Yeah. It's not their house, And what they did is they put the baby in the oven. All right?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you get your head around something like that?
Yeah, that's next level stuff, that, isn't it?
Yeah. So that was when I came back from Africa. I lectured for a year because I didn't have anything left.
Did it impact your mental health at all? Did it?
Yeah,
Some of
yeah.
that
I
stuff?
mean, I never really suffered from flashbacks,
No.
So what I know now, having been in pre-hospital care for best part of 30 years, I suppose, is every traumatic event that you are part of, you will have a still photograph of. And you take that. So if the job lasted hours and hours and hours, you won't have a video. You'll have one image.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you file it away. And hopefully it stays there. You put it away and that's where it stays. When you start to suffer from PTSD and you have mental health issues, what happens is those images pop out, and they pop out because they're triggered. So maybe they're triggered by a smell, maybe they're triggered by an event, a sound.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, firefights and firework night when you've got loads of, beautiful fireworks in the sky, but actually ex-military people are seeing red and green tracer.
Yeah.
That sort of stuff. Suddenly you're back wherever that was. And you're not a mumbling wreck, but you're not present. You are somewhere else.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that was the trigger,
yeah.
And so that sort of thing started to happen. And one of the things I started to do is I started to write stuff down, and I started to write poetry. I write poetry about. I wrote a poem about all the things that troubled me, all the things that I was having trouble coming to terms with,
Yeah.
So I wrote a poem about what it takes to be an ambulance man. I wrote a poem about corporal killings because that happened in the province when I was there, and I was in the COP, so I was travelling around the province, and I kind of felt that maybe that could have happened to me, So, but what I kind of had was sort of, I think the easiest way to explain it is kind of survivor's guilt. That when the corporal killings happened, I felt kind of responsible.
I get that. I call it reverse PTSD.
Yeah.
You're not getting it because the trauma has affected you, but you're getting it because it didn't affect you, because you feel you should have been involved in that. Yeah, I do get that to a certain extent. I do get
and
that.
kind of pre-hospital care was the same for me. So I had to find a way to do something to kind of put this away, and I started to write stuff down. And as I wrote things down, it kind of went, But I wrote a poem. So I left the army at the kind of just before Gulf War One. So it was all kicking off.
Yeah.
I've got friends at 21. I did selection at 21. One of my best friends ended up as chief instructor there, a guy called, and guys that I served with, a couple of guys from the COP got into 21, and I'd get invited to the mess as a guest.
Yeah.
So I was kind of in and out of there, and I saw guys were taking short-term contracts. They were kitting up. They were shipping out. People were getting promoted. Some of those guys were ready. Some of them weren't. In my opinion.
Yeah.
And I was kind of riddled with guilt because I wasn't going. So I wrote a poem about that was going on, about leaving the army, and I'll give it to you now. It goes, I make all my command decisions from my nice soft thinking chair, and I wear a blank expression for my soul, it seems, elsewhere. I've gone over all my orders 1,000 times, it seems. I've checked all of the equipment. I've done all this in my dreams. Now I'm cold and I'm tired. The start line seems so far away. I've grown tired of the training and I've been longing for this day. Now I'm looking at the garden, not an ounce of sand in sight. I'm not looking through a night sight. All I see is pure sunlight. When I became a soldier, they said you're scarred for life, but I never felt the wound, nor the scar left by the knife. At least not until I walked away and tried to live my life.
It's quite deep, that. It's deep. That's deep. I've got you. Yeah.
Mate, I mean, it's difficult to see people that you care about, being put in harm's way.
Yeah.
Another thing that I kind of struggled with, as an older man, I'm looking at the army, it's evolving. So Afghan, you know, who was chief instructor at 21, took a short-term contract with Global, went to Afghan to help set up the elections out there, got shot up the arse at a place called Mazar Sharif, and he
I
died.
know Mazar, yeah. I've been there. Yeah.
Yeah, he was an exceptional soldier, you know. But I kind of felt the loss of I felt the loss of every one of them.
Yeah.
You know, because that was my family, you know. So so I found that kind of pretty tough, and troubling, you know. But you know, but I was an older man. One of the things that I didn't enjoy, and I kind of thought that was a failing of the army at that time, was when I did my tours of Northern Ireland. You know, I was a Brit commander. Or like I say, I was in the COP, so if there was a risky anything, you know, we were at the front of it. And I always looked upon it. My job as a patrol commander was to take men and put them in harm's way. Right, that's the job, you know. But it's also your job to bring them home.
Yeah.
You know. And I felt that during the early days of Afghan, that focus had been lost. You know, we were so kind of committed to having successes and wins, you know, that we kind of didn't realise that these people were going to come back changed. You know. So yeah, kind of had a bit of trouble with that. You know? I committed to the Warrior program, and like most people, you know, I didn't really believe in counselling. I started to get better the day that I came to the conclusion that no one's coming. If Mick's coming through this, then he's going to do what he's always done. He's going to roll his sleeves up, work hard, get through it, just like we did in the mill. The British were never big on rescue missions. We would have countless times with the Americans have launched, you know, SEAL teams have gone and got this and gone and got that. In the British Army, when I was serving, if you got yourself into shit, you had to get yourself out because no one was coming. And in civilian life, I drew on that. You know, I found myself in a kind of dark place. And I suddenly realised, I said, look, you know, you've been in worse places in your life before, and you come through it, and you can do it again, you know. So I just kind of embraced the Warrior program. I learned a lot more about the conscious and subconscious mind, where PTSD lives, how you can combat it, you know. But you have to live a life. You can't be riddled with guilt. You can't spend your time looking backwards, because if you're looking backwards, you're missing the present.
Yeah, of course. Right. No, I was saying that to all people. You know, your body's designed to go that way, not that way.
That's it. So, you know, so that was, you know, they get you to focus on all the positives. So I've got a beautiful wife. You know, I've got these two gorgeous young women. You know, 12 and 15, and I kind of thought to myself, you know, I'm 65 next year, right? So, like I showed you the pictures, you know, I've lost 3.5 stone.
Yeah.
I couldn't walk upstairs with being out of breath. That was the Warrior program, and me saying, if I'm going to live a life, I got to get the weight off. I've got to be able to do stuff. I've got to be able to do stuff. I've got to be able to play with my kids. I've got to be able to take them on holiday and all the rest of it. And then I sort of said to myself, right, you know, what have you got left in the tank? 65 years old, you know, I've got a few aches and pains going on, blah, blah, blah. What have you got left in the tank? And I decided that what I was going to do was get my state registration back. So I'm a qualified paramedic, but you have to be state registered to practice.
Okay.
Right? So I spent 3 months getting the weight off. I spent 6 months doing courses. I went to the Royal London Hospital to do head injuries, Great Ormond Street to do paediatric advanced life support, did Resus Council, ILS, ALS, and started doing courses. Then I applied to my local ambulance service, took a job as an ambulance technician, and did my Section 19 blue light driving assessment the other day and passed that. And that's the last thing I need. All I've got to do is put the paperwork in.
Oh, good. So you're back on your
Mick's a fully qualified state registered paramedic.
Happy days.
Yeah, and purpose and routine saves people like us.
Oh, it does. I've said, you've got to have something to go for. Who grabs after nothing?
Yeah.
You don't grab after nothing, do you? Do you know what I mean? You got to have something to grab at.
In my darkest times, I've stood in front of my bathroom mirror, and I used to have I wrote something on the mirror, which was life isn't over; it's just different.
Yeah.
And when I stood there every morning to do my ablutions, I'd read it out loud to myself. But whether I had somewhere to go or not, I'd get washed and shaved. I'd put a shirt and a tie on maybe, and I'd walk out of that house like I was someone.
Yeah.
And I'm going somewhere. I'm doing something. And at the end of the day, I'd come back and I'd stand in front of that mirror and go, well, that's what I did today.
Yeah.
Even if that's what I did today was just earn a couple of £100 for the girls.
It's still an achievement, isn't it? You've achieved something, haven't you? Do you know what I mean? So what other sort of work? You did some BG work? Did you do some?
Yeah. So
some CP type work?
I was having a drink. Wolfie and Nigel Farage.
Yeah.
Wolfie's Nigel's close protection officer, has been for a long time. I met Wolfie because my best friend was his best friend. They were in the military police together. And I was just having a beer with Wolfie one night, and I said, Wolfie, have you got a medic on the team, on Nigel's CP team? And he said, no. I said, wow, if anyone's going to get a knife stuck in them, probably going to be Nigel. And I didn't think any more of it. We had a couple of beers. Anyway, 4 days later, the phone rings, and it's Wolfie, and he says, I booked you on a CP course. How do you feel about coming on as a medic? And I didn't have anything in the wind, so I said, great. So I did the course. Next 9 months, I'm all over the country with Nigel. He was leader of UKIP at the time.
That was on his Brexit campaign type stuff, was it?
It was before that.
Right,
it was UKIP.
Right, that's right, yeah.
But the team were all former Royal Marines Commandos. We had a couple of SBS guys on the team. But that was the toughest gig on the circuit, and every day was a learning day. And you'd be at a political rally, and there'd be 2,000 people there want a selfie with Nigel like they're meeting Jesus.
Yeah.
Right. And then you walk outside, and there'd be 2,000 people want to kill him.
Mr. Marmite.
Mate. It was fast. It was really fast.
Yeah.
But as you know, CP isn't about telling people they can't do stuff. It's our job. Nigel will say, I want to go here for this particular meeting or this rally or whatever. And it's your job. It's your job to make it happen.
Yeah.
If you're the guy that says, well, you can't do that, you're out of work because they're looking for someone that can.
Yeah, of course they are. Yeah, of course they are. Yeah, they need to do their thing, don't they? You know what I mean?
So it's really funny. I spoke to the team yesterday in Brussels, and there's another little job in the wind for Mick. But from there, I suddenly was on the circuit. I worked for the Saudi royal family.
Yeah.
Worked for some wealthy Chinese, high net worth. I worked for the Usmanov Russians that have just left. But I ended up working for Sir Elton John. I spent 7 years with Sir Elton as part of the residential security team.
Oh, okay.
And this was something that I try and tell young guys, especially ex-MIL people that are interested in the security industry. And I said, right, the first thing you have to know about the private security industry is there's no security in security.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you're right, yeah. Got that.
And I've taught on CP courses and stuff. I've got my SIA kind of instructors and my education and learning certificates and stuff, so I teach. But I said to the guys, it's such a fickle place. The first time you get caught giving the mistress or the wife the once over, you're out of work, right? The first time you get caught with her giving you the once over, you're gone.
Yeah.
And so there was this really sharp black guy on one of my courses, and he was fit and he was muscular and he was like really dapper, And I said, mate, look, go out and buy a suit that's like half a size too big. Don't wear a fitted shirt, get rid of that cologne, because That's how you lose a gig. And when you lose a gig, you don't lose it for a day. You're gone.
Oh, yeah, you're only as good as your last mess, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I worked for the Saudi royal family, the Crown Prince came out of his hotel room at 2:00 in the morning, said, "Tell everyone we're going to Berlin." And I'm thinking, I'm supposed to take the girls to school tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
So it's 100-hour weeks. You're living someone else's life.
And of course, even if any of these clients, if they're up for 6:00 in the morning, you're up for 4.
Yep.
And if they go to bed at 2 in the morning, you go to bed at 4.
When I
Do you know
was,
what I mean? So it's like, it's always a couple of hours either side to prep and de-prep.
towards the end, when I was Nigel Farage's security driver, I'd pick him up from his house in Chelsea at 7:30, which meant I was up at 5:30.
Yeah.
Suited and booted, get to Chelsea, boom, pick the boss up, take him to the office. Then he'd have meetings, might have a lunch at a private club, back to the office in the afternoon. He liked to go to the pub after work with the people in the office. Then we're going out to another kind of political meeting. Then there may be some sort of function, and I'm dropping him off at home, maybe 2:00 in the morning, which means I'm home by 4, but I'm getting up at 5:30 to pick him up at 7:30 the next morning.
Yeah, it's long old days.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
23-hour
horrendous.
days were normal.
What was Elton like? Did you travel with Elton or just on the RST?
No. Elton, so our RST is where these people take the world on from. It has to be an oasis of calm. It has to be a safe place for them, a beachhead,
Yeah.
where they live a normal life and they take on the world from. So I loved working for Sir Elton. Sir Elton's a dude. I mean,
Yeah.
he's really down to earth. He's, he can be a little bit harsh, but then I'm ex-mil, so I'm used to people sort of taking the piss, and poking you with a stick to see if you're a bit of a nutcase or not. I really enjoyed it. It was a lovely place. Lots of people come and go, lots of guests, I kind of loved it. I can't tell you too much about it, as you know, because I've signed all sorts of confidentiality.
Yeah.
But
I'm pushing you for it, though. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, I'm sorry. What I will say is that lots of young men straight out the mill, special forces, turn up with kind of bodies beautiful, rippling muscles, and they're straight into a high profile CP role. With high level principles, but I found them that they didn't last particularly long. Like they'd be with us for 6, 10, 12 weeks, and then they were gone. Because in that time, either they made a mistake or they said or did something that was deemed to be a bit sort of close to the mark. Some of the guys, because the principals are very personable, woke up one day and thought they were friends. I mean, they truly believed that they were friends. And at the end of the day, you're to help.
Yeah, you are hired help. Make no bones about it.
So as these young guys turn up and step forward, I step back. There was a job where the client had security dogs, but no one was a dog handler. So I went away and did the dog handling course.
Yeah.
And then when I was a dog handler, the next logical thing to do was to get my own dogs. So no one was a medic. So I was a medic. I was an advanced driver. I was a dog handler. When these guys step forward, I do the school run, looking after the nannies, getting the cars ready, sorting the dogs out. And I was with Sir Elton for 7 years, whereas a lot of people come and go in a heartbeat.
I can imagine. I can imagine.
But it was a really interesting little life. You can earn a few quid, and that's all good. But I sort of say to people, look, they're definitely 100-hour weeks. So if you did a 100-hour week and you worked in Tesco's, you'd be taking home £1,000 a week.
Yeah,
you would, a tenner an hour. That's kind of, So in a CP role, if you're taking home, £1,000 quid, £1,200 a week, that's good money for anybody, But you have to appreciate the hours that you're putting
Yeah,
in.
you're gonna work
living
for that.
someone
You are
else's
gonna work
life,
for that, yeah.
you know, and I am, too old, too fat, too slow. I found 100-hour weeks tough, and I kind of put my hands up and sort of said, you know what, for the last couple of years till I retire, I'm going to do what I know, and I know the ambulance service.
Yeah. So that is your plan, though, is to do the ambulance stuff?
It's where I am right now,
Yeah.
The journey was to get my state registration back. The easiest way to do that was to work for a national ambulance service.
Yeah.
Because they have a lot of training and recertification in place that you could just jump on. But I've done that now. There are a couple of CP tasks in the wind, and I'm tempted. I'm thinking I wouldn't mind one last dance. There's a job in India that I've been offered.
Yeah.
8 weeks on, 8 weeks off.
Yeah,
but
nice.
As you know, Phil, it's proper money. If someone offers you £1,000 a day, that's hard to turn down.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah, absolutely.
And you're kind of thinking, well, even if I do that for 4 or 6 months, I mean, mate, that's proper money.
Yeah, and it's money that you can put away and do stuff with.
Yeah. If Nigel does go back into frontline politics, they'll need a medic again.
Yeah,
and I know that job inside out. I know what's required. You're not only looking after the principal, you're looking after the team. So
yeah,
I'm more everyone's GP. I'm their first point of contact.
Yeah.
I had an operator come up to me once, and she said, "I think I got cystitis." and I was like, straight down to the chemist, and I got her what she needed. Boom, and the job is to look after them all.
Yeah.
I've had a lovely little life. If Roach died tomorrow, no one could stand up in church and say, "Oh, but you had so much more to do." People would say,
just quickly touch on you, because we've been down the workshop, but I also wanted to quickly talk to you about your YouTube stuff and all that, because I know that you've got a YouTube channel and all that sort of stuff. So quickly talk to us about that.
Like yourself, I quite enjoyed a little bit of bushcraft and survival. Did it in the army.
Yeah.
And I was good at it. And I went into it and called it my own personal madness, because I'd love to just walk out in the woods, and for someone ex-mil that was having trouble with the 21st century, food, water, and somewhere to sleep was a gift. There were no wives, girlfriends, mortgages, like everybody. I had dalliances where I got myself in trouble with money. Go out off in the woods and talk to yourself, which is what you're doing when you get involved in YouTube. And I would just do bushcraft and survival. And I started to make the videos. I made them for about 6 months before I put myself in front of the camera. And my YouTube channel is called Armouredcockroach. It's had 3 million views over the years, so kind of someone's watching it. I got picked up by National Geographic, and I made a couple of shows for them, which was the kind of UK preppers show. And then I got involved in the media for that promotion, of those TV shows. And lots of, when you do media, people poke you with a stick. They want to see if you're a nutcase. Want to see if you want, hoard guns and ammunition, live in a compound, and you're waiting for Jesus.
Yeah.
And this isn't America, So if you won't find greater preppers than the British Army, because the British Army are preparing for something every single second of every day, and that's all prepping is. It's putting a little bit aside today because tomorrow might be a bit tougher, and that's all it is. My 96-year-old mum was a prepper because she has 6 kids, and we always had food in the house.
Yeah, so it's about providing, really, isn't it? And providing in any circumstance.
So
you do say to some people prepping, and you get this sort of like, where's his tinfoil hat? Do you
yes,
know?
Exactly. And the thing about prepping is, so during the pandemic, before the pandemic, everybody would love to sort of poke Roach with a stick, see if he's a nutcase, and have a bit of a laugh.
Yeah.
The pandemic came along, and I went into the BBC and did a show with Vanessa Phelps, and she tore me a new arse more than once. And on this occasion, she said, "Who knew you were right?" That's the first thing she said to me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because I knew the pandemic was coming, because I didn't.
But you knew to be ready.
Yeah, but I knew that it's just good sense to put a little bit aside today, because tomorrow might be a bit tougher. And
It's an insurance policy, isn't it?
I would say to people, so people would talk to me about Armageddon and the end of the world, and I'd listen to the journalist as they interviewed me, but I'd change one word when I answered them back, and I would say, well, if you were laid off and you got young children at home, right? So Woolworths, all of the kind of big
all those big
stores.
shutting down.
We've seen it,
Wilco's or whatever it was.
Woolworths
They
had
piled in.
Woolworths had 27,000 people working for them. They went home for a bank holiday weekend. When they came back on Tuesday, Woolworths was gone. Right, 27,000 people out of work.
Yeah.
That happened time and time and time again. And I said to her, if you're one of those people and you can't pay your mortgage and you've got young children at home, would that be a catastrophe? And I go, yeah, that's pretty serious. I go, right. So not only have you got to find money to pay all that, but you've got to find £400 a week to feed the family.
Yeah.
Because you've got no food in the house. Right. So prepping is about good housekeeping. It's not about what happened during the pandemic, which is buying things you don't need with money you haven't got. Right?
Bog rolls.
That was what was happening.
The bog roll thing was insane.
So,
wasn't it? Yeah.
So that was kind of prepping, in a nutshell for me. I was sort of just talking good sense. The food shortages that happened during the pandemic, I can tell you really simply exactly what happened. We had a government minister went on national TV and said, everybody's got to go home for 14 days. And every wife, every mother, every person that runs the home, we do our shopping weekly. We always have.
Mm.
And so the old lady said, do you know what? If we got to go home for 14 days, I better get another week's shopping. So they went out and they bought another week's shopping, and most people put it on a credit card because they haven't got another month's money.
That's right. Yeah. Because most people are hand them out.
Yeah. So they put it on a credit card, but at least we've got enough food in the house. We've got 2 weeks' food in the house now. Right? 4 days later, a government minister went on the TV and said, no. We don't think you're going to have to go home for 2 weeks. We think you're going to have to go home for 4 weeks. And so again, the old lady goes, blimey, we got to stay at home for 4 weeks. I better get some more shopping. And that's why the shops was empty. There were no food shortages in the United Kingdom because of Brexit. There was such uncertainty in retail, right? The two biggest firms that own the cold storage facilities in the United Kingdom built the biggest one in Europe during Brexit because they thought they were going to have problems import-export, right? And they built the biggest cold storage facility and they filled it to the gunnels. And it wasn't because of the pandemic, it was because of Brexit.
Mm.
So when the pandemic struck, every food storage facility in this country was full to the gunnels and there were no food shortages.
No.
But the reason there was no food in the shops is because everybody bought things they didn't need with money they didn't have.
Crazy, isn't it? Absolutely crazy.
But that's prepping.
Yeah.
And that's all it is.
Get it right.
I got fruitcake. Fruitcake. I've always taken a mickey out of him. Love him like a brother. He lives in the middle of nowhere. He loves his shooting club and all the rest of it.
He has got a tinfoil hat.
Yeah, mate. His family own a farm.
Yeah.
And I've always taken a mickey out of him because just on the horizon there's this massive wind farm.
Yeah.
And I'm always saying like, Sarge, do you own that? Do you own that? is that your free electricity?
Is that your power source?
Yeah. And he goes, yeah. That's if we run out of power, I pop across the field and plug it in. But he's invested really heavily in solar power. But he's an engineer, So he's running the home now pretty much it's costing him very little, probably costing him 20% of what it used to.
Self-sufficient. He was telling me how he was going to be selling some back to him soon. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So
yeah, that works, doesn't it?
So, like you know, if you're going to have a position of preparedness, what you need is food, water, and somewhere to sleep. And all prepping is about options. You know, so I say to people, if the power goes off, what's your plan? It doesn't matter what your plan is. I'm going to go out in the garden. I'm going to cook dinner on a barbecue. Okay, great. We got a plan. You know, I used to say to people, if you can bake bread in any of its forms without gas or electricity, if you know the ingredients, if you can roll it out, if you can make a loaf that you can put on your table and feed your family, you are somewhere near being prepared. Yeah. So I've got the ingredients to make bread, and I'm not kidding you. It's a really simple recipe. There's only 4 ingredients, you know, flour, water, yeast, and a bit of salt, you know, a bit of oil maybe, and you can bake a loaf. You can put it on a table and you can feed your family. Whatever the thing is, whatever you live on, you know, that's what you need to put to one side. You know, when I go to the shop and like washing up liquids, you know, buy one get one free, I take it home. I put one in the larder. I put one on the shelf in the garage. You know, it's about good housekeeping and saving money. Yeah. You know, but it gives you options. If I get laid off and I've got no money coming in, I haven't got like £600 to give the old lady for shopping this month or whatever she taps me up for, right? I just go and get it from the garage off the rack. I put it in the larder. You know, the old lady says to me sometimes, we haven't got any cooking oil, or I've run out of this or run out of that. And I go, I'll go and get you one. You know, you can dip into it anytime you like. It's not for the end of the world. Yeah. It's for whenever you need it.
It's when you need it. Yeah, I think that's the key thing for when you need it. Yeah. Not even sometimes when you need it or you need it, but it's your
story.
Yeah, you know,
is going to be very different than mine. Yeah. You know, if you're going to long-term food storage stuff, store what you and your little family eat. Yeah. You know, there's no point if you never eat dried rice, if you never break bread, if you never do any of these kind of ideal long-term storage food stuffs, well, it makes little or no point storing them. Yeah. You know, but if you've got a little bit of knowledge as to how to put a meal, you know, from when I grew up in the 70s, you know, we had the 3-day week. We had power strikes. We had no coal for the coal power stations all over the country. The electricity went off at 7 o'clock in the evening.
Yeah, you used to go off the time, didn't you?
Yeah, but we had a coal fire. The coals had died down. My mum would put a big pot of stew on the fire with a lid on it. We'd sit there at the dining room table with a couple of candles going. We'd have a big stew of kind of stew and dumplings, so just fresh vegetables, whatever meat or sausages you got. A few dumplings in it. We'd all sit there. We'd have like a proper scoff, and we'd all go to bed early. Go up the next morning, and guess what? The world was still there.
Crack on. Yeah.
You know, nobody went to bed hungry, and that's prepping.
Yeah, no, that's a great lesson. Listen, I'm going to encourage people to have a look at your YouTube stuff. So
really appreciate it.
We'll put the link below.
I haven't done a lot lately, but
that's all right. There's still stuff they can catch up.
But
on.
someone's watching it.
Yeah. Listen, it's been tremendous having you on.
It's lovely to be here, Phil.
Hopefully, we'll keep in touch, and we'll as things pan out and as things progress.
Yes, for sure.
And if things go wrong, we'll definitely be in touch.
Thank you very much.
Nice one.
God bless.
Great to see you, buddy.
Thanks, mate.